Shalom, this is Avraham Shira from Eretz Israel. Welcome to our Erev Shabbat talk. Today we're going to look at a sefer from a great rabbi from the early Achronim, Rabbi Eliezer Papo, who was a great Mekubal and a student of other great Mekubalim, but he wrote a book of Musar called Pele Yoetz. And it's one of the earlier books where the rabbi takes different subjects and then brings his knowledge and experience to each subject. And Rabbi Papo, he brings a whole section on Shabbat. And when you first open up and read it, you start asking questions, because he tells us like Shabbat is about 10 different things. And then it starts to raise more questions, because he says like this: if a person, and all this is from the sources from the Gemarot and from the Midrashim, the Zohar, he says if a person keeps Shabbat, he's forgiven all the idol worship he's ever done. Really? Idol worshiper. He says like Enosh. Now Enosh, of course, was a leader of his generation before Noah. And Enosh was a great soul. But he tried all the avodah zaras, all the types of the occult practices, all magic. And he had interactions with a lot of different beings besides human beings, let's say. And yet, when you keep Shabbat, you're forgiven like Enosh. It's a pretty good deal. And then the Pele Yoetz goes on to tell us, if Am Yisrael keeps 2 Shabbatot, we're automatically redeemed. Now, wait a minute, what does that mean? Have we been redeemed? Well, it looks like kind of. We have Eretz Israel. The Jews have a place to come home to. A lot of great things have happened in the last 100 years to the Jewish people, and a lot of terrible things, obviously. But are we redeemed? Well, if I ask some people, they're going to say no way, because it's not a Torah government. And other people are going to say no, but it's a process, and it takes time, and we're working from the physical to the spiritual elevation of the nation, like Rav Kook. And it's a long, multi-generational process to go from a physical people in exile to a spiritual people in their homeland. But if you keep 2 Shabbats, you get it redeemed. So maybe that's a raya, it's a proof that we haven't really kept 2 complete Shabbats. And how many people have to keep those Shabbatot for that teaching to happen? Because when the rabbis say things, they're not just saying things. There's a little spark of prophecy in everything they say. And so, so we haven't kept 2 Shabbatot perfectly, because we're not completely redeemed. All right. He goes on to tell us that all the Geula depends on Shabbat, because Geula is a transition from, Geula being redemption, is a transition from the exile to the freedom. And Shabbat is, of course, the ultimate symbol of human freedom, that we can stay at home, not go to work, and enjoy life in its most essential things, like family, food and drink, music, song, dance, etc. The Rav also goes to tell us that there is no healing without Shabbat. That if a person's sick, he needs to look at his keeping Shabbat. Okay, so Shabbat brings down new light to the soul, and then the soul receives that light, and it spreads out into the body, and it's going to heal us. Well, there are many Pesukim that support this idea that Shabbat is an element or a part of the healing process. Then he tells us, of course, we can't do Shabbat tshuva if we don't keep Shabbat. There's no such thing as repentance, return, restoration, tikkun, all those positive concepts, if we don't keep Shabbat. Why is that? Why is Shabbat so central to everything? And then he goes on to tell us the importance of not speaking our everyday matters on Shabbat. And most people that have come in contact with Shabbat are familiar with this idea that we don't talk about the stock market on Shabbat, we don't talk about the soccer game on Shabbat, and we try to keep things at a very high plane of consciousness. Now, is that a law that the rabbis are trying to box us in? I don't think so. The rabbis don't give us laws to box us in. The rabbis give us laws that guide us to a higher level. Okay, it kind of pushes us upward. It takes out that external speech on Shabbat, and automatically you see your consciousness is raised. Because that is the consciousness of Shabbat. And I've noticed whenever, and it's not been one time, where the conversation goes into politics and the conversation goes into other things, and automatically the spirit of the event falls. You feel it in your heart. You feel it in your mind. I'm not talking about the highest ideas that have been given to the human race. I'm talking about, mundanity, politics, violence, building materials, fixing your car, whatever it is, all that stuff, it is real. It's important, but Shabbat is supposed to be something else. And I can't reach the something else if my speech is not focused in that place. Okay, now, all of this, Rav Papo is telling us are all dependent on Shabbat. So it seems like a very big order. How can it be? Why is Shabbat so central to all these different aspects of Jewish life? So I thought about this question a little bit, and it reminded me of a statement of the rabbis. The rabbis, in the Gemara, I think it's Rav, who was the head of the Babylonian yeshiva. It said, he saw that his students were drowsy. They were kind of getting sleepy. He said, do you know that one woman brought forth 600,000 children? And everybody's like, what? They wake up. Then he said, of course, Yocheved. If it wasn't for Yocheved, the mother of Moses, that there would not have been a Moshe Rabbeinu to take all of Am Yisrael out of Egypt, and the 600,000 root souls that came out of Egypt to form the basis, the genetic mass of Am Yisrael. If he hadn't done that, there would be no Am Yisrael. And if Yocheved hadn't given birth to Moshe, there would be no Am Yisrael. So what's that teaching? It's just an exaggeration. It's kind of like a nice extrapolation of information that logically you can deduce that if Yocheved didn't have Moshe, there would be no Am Yisrael. Well, God could have assigned that job to any other woman to give birth to Moshe. But let's think about it for a minute. Where are we from? We are from our mothers. But where are they from? Their mothers. And their mothers. And there is a direct genetic link through every Jew all the way back to Sarah. Now, if you don't believe that, okay, you're entitled. But I believe it. So Sarah, the wife of Abraham, who gave birth to Yitzhak, who gave birth to, and then, of course, Rivka came along, gave birth to Jacob, and Rachel and Leah, and Zilpah, and, oh boy, who's the other Shifra? It'll come back to me, I'm sorry. They all gave birth to the 12 tribes. Now, what are we saying? That one spark of genetic material can be spread over thousands of years and provide continuity, spiritual continuity to a nation. In other words, in Kabbalah, this is called the intercollusion of all olamot. That's the English. It's hitkolalut, hitchabrut kol olamot. Hitkashrut, the idea that everything is attached to each other and everything comes from one thing. And everything includes everything else. So Yocheved included all those souls in her through the idea of Moses saving the people. And Sarah included all those souls in her because they all came from her. So that inter-inclusion of souls stands for us as an example for Shabbat. How? because all the mitzvot are included also in one thing, the will of God. There's one God, and he has one will, but that will spreads out into 613 smaller wills, but they're all his will, and each are different, and they're prescribed differently according to the parameters of whatever the mitzvah is, but it's all his will, and his will is one. And so Shabbat is the center of the Jewish week. It's the center of human experience because it's the goal of creation, that man works and then he comes to rest and appreciate and enjoy and praise and acknowledge and expand his mind to a new level. We think we've reached the great levels of consciousness because we're sending a Tesla car to Mars, or that we've healed a few diseases. Our consciousness has not been tapped to what's really in there. Most people are running on 10% of their brain power, maybe less. We haven't begun to explore the potential of the expansion of human consciousness and ideas in physics and in metaphysics, and all the categories of all the disciplines. So we have to be a little humble about what we know, because we think we know a lot, because so much has been revealed. But what's been revealed is still drops in the bucket to what there really is. And if I don't know that, I don't make room to receive more drops from the bucket. If I don't have some humility, how can I receive new ideas from God? And so Shabbat is this inclusion of all the other mitzvot, and therefore it has inter-inclusive power to bring geula, to bring healing, to bring tshuva, to forgive us for our sins. Avodah Zarah, it's a death penalty if you get warned by two kosher witnesses that know what they're doing. No one wants to be killed for, casting a spell or acknowledging some foreign god. And that can be forgiven just by keeping Shabbat, because the light of Shabbat touches all the other points. So the intercollusion of all the worlds depends on Shabbat. Shabbat spreads its power into the week. Don't say that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are independent days. They're not. They're getting their life force through the channel called Shabbat. Now, how that works? Well, that's a very deep question, and it's a good question. But we understand, again, we go back to God's will. That one will gets splintered, the best word I can come with right now, into 613. But those 613 all contain, as it's revealed in the book of reincarnation, all 613 have 613 of their own. More and more precise and specific sparks of will. Will being desire. Okay? So when you do anything of Shabbat, it touches all the other points. It elevates all the other things. So if I speak holy on Shabbat, and I say, okay, I'm not going to talk about the corona on Shabbat, unless it's absolutely necessary to do with a mitzvah of some Jew. And I'm not going to talk about politics because so-and-so is trying to get elected. And I'm not going to, I'm talking to myself here, folks. I'm not giving anybody any musar, right? Because the world is interesting, and I'm interested in the world, and I love things. I love people. I love action. I love what's going on because it's God's. It's his drama. It's his stage. He's the director. And we find ourselves unwilling actors in the play, most of the time unwilling. So when we change the unwillingness to be an actor in his play, all of a sudden the script gets more interesting. It starts to connect what we're doing here. And Shabbat is the end game of the script, which is Olam Haba, which is the world to come, which is the redemption, which is the elevation of all humanity to its truth, its divine truth, its real identity. So all of that's connected. Now, some people come along and try to break things into pieces. You see this a lot. And it's natural. The human mind wants to understand things in pieces. And the problem, I'll tell you, it's not a problem because it's the way we use critical thinking to break things into pieces. And we need critical thinking. I need to understand the difference between good and evil, between right and wrong, between impure and pure, and holy and profane. That's breaking things into pieces as well. But I still have to have the totality of the oneness behind my consciousness as my support system. Now, some people come along and they say, no. I'll keep the Torahs in the Bible, but I'm not, all this rabbinical stuff's too much for me. And it sounds, well, the Bible's got a lot of mitzvot in it. I had an uncle who once argued this way, and I was a kid. So what could I say? But I listened. But he didn't really know the interconnectedness between the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Shulchan Aruch, the Rambam, all the halachic books that all are describing the details of the mitzvot and how they're all rooted back in the Chumash, in the 5 books of Moses, which are all rooted back in the Das, the consciousness of Moses, who his mind was just a channel for the upper mind. So when you see the interconnectedness in that pyramid structure of will, then all of a sudden it looks, hey, this could be one. It could be one God with one will to make humanity the best it can be and to glorify himself and all creation. Because look, if you're God, you don't need the glory. We need his glory to find our own glory. Okay? And that's a very important idea. It's worth repeating. We need God's glory in order to find our own glory. And not egotistical glory. The good glory. The glory that makes you happy to be you. So I want to bless everybody to be happy to be themselves because you have no choice, Everybody else is taken, as a friend, as I think some English poet wrote. And Shabbat is our time of the interconnectedness of all the points. All the days of the week connect back to Shabbat. All the wills of the week connect back to the holy will that's connect back into Shabbat. And even if we fall far away, you can still trace your way back to the leaving of Shabbat. Because Shabbat consciousness, really, we want to carry it all days of the week. We want to carry this coming holy day into Sunday and into Monday. How do you do it? Well, through your memory and through actions. And buying stuff for Shabbat for the next week. And doing Shabbat dishes on Wednesday. My wife doesn't like that too much. But these ideas still connect us back to that oneness. And when your consciousness is rooted in the oneness, then you can deal with the multiplicity. And when you can deal with the multiplicity, because you have the oneness behind your overall intelligence, the pieces don't bother you as much. You start to learn how to see the interconnectedness. And then my faith doesn't get challenged every time I hear some foreign idea. And then my faith grows. And I feel good. Good to be me. Good to be in this world. Because, if you listen to the news a couple hours, you're not going to want to feel good to be in this world. He's like, I think I'm going to join Tesla on Mars. Why do I want to be in this world if you look at all the negative things that are happening? But when I know that it's one, that there is a God behind everything, including viruses, including economic downfalls, including wars. It's not because we're blaming God for man's mistakes, but we're understanding he can and will fix everything in his time, according partially to our efforts. Our efforts make a difference. And how the rabbis asked this question, well, if God's going to bring the Geula, why do I need to bring the mitzvot all the time? Why do I need to worry about 613 mitzvot? He's going to bring redemption regardless. The rabbis answer, well, he will bring redemption regardless. He will fix humanity. The difference is, do we do it with mercy or do we do it with judgment? And judgment means pain and suffering. And mercy means kindness, love, patience, understanding. And we fix things that way, much faster and much easier. And Shabbat is that time that we get to put it all together, to put the pieces of our week together, to put the pieces of our lives together. So I want to bless everybody to have that consciousness of the oneness and to be able to deal with the specificity of the multiplicity. Oh, isn't that clever? All the details, and they're all still rooted back in the oneness, and the oneness is rooted in Shabbat, the ultimate purpose of creation, where God sits on his throne, and guess what? We sit with him. We don't keep working, because we're part of the infinite creator, who rests on Shabbat and enjoys our hard work of this week. And we'll get ready for next week, but next week, not today, not tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow night, after midnight. So, when we get these ideas down, my friends, and we accept them in our heart, we change. Our priorities change. Shabbat becomes more important than basketball games. Shabbat becomes more important than fixing my car. Shabbat becomes more important than all the things of the weekday. It's not that those things aren't important. They're just not as important as reaching that pinnacle of consciousness that Shabbat can give us. But we've got to give something back. And we've got to give it at our level, whatever you know. And whatever, if you don't know, ask your friend or ask your rabbi. And begin. Begin with the joy. Begin with having your family together at one dinner a week. How many families eat together? What a joy. How can you not want to eat with your kids? Don't you want to eat with your parents once in a while? It's amazing how the parents want the kids more than the kids want the parents. But that's part of what the rabbis teach about that is very beautiful. They say that more than the calf wants to suckle, the mother wants to, nurse the calf. Because giving gives more pleasure than receiving, folks. And when you have children, you automatically you have to learn to give. And that makes you love them more than they love you. Well, that's okay. I'm down for that. I can love my kids more than they love me. That's all right. We'll get over that. My ego can handle it. So, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. We'll be back next week on all the platforms. And we had a great class last night on the Lighthouse. Check it out if you can on Facebook and the Lighthouse. We're beginning a 10-class series entitled The 10 Windows on the Palace. And each one is a separate class on a different part of the human structure that enables us to see into the spiritual realm. There are classes on meditation. There's active experiential meditation at the end of each class and questions and answers. So check that out on the Lighthouse. You can also, we'll be starting back again in Web Yeshiva soon with a whole series on kingship, on personal kingship, on international kingship, etc. And then we'll be coming out with more stuff as the weeks unfold. So look forward to seeing you and all of that. Check us out on Patreon. We have a daily Rabbi Nachman class that we're going to finish Likutei Moharan, God willing, no matter what, because we're already like 200 Torahs in. There's about another 200 Torahs left. So God bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.